Amy Carter sat in the back row of her physics class, staring out the window at the gray October sky. Mr. Rodriguez was talking about something called orbital mechanics, drawing circles and arrows on the whiteboard. The other students were taking notes or playing with their phones under their desks. Amy just watched the clouds move across the sky and tried to look interested. She had been back at Lincoln High School for 3 weeks now. 3 weeks of pretending to be a normal 17-year-old girl who cared about homework and weekend plans. 3 weeks of acting like she belonged here, with these kids who worried about pop quizzes and who was dating who. But Amy was not like them, not anymore. Miss Carter, can you tell us what happens when a spacecraft enters orbit around a planet? Mr. Rodriguez asked, looking right at her. Amy blinked and focused on the teacher. The answer came to her mind instantly. She had seen it happen dozens of times, had calculated the exact trajectories needed to avoid enemy fire while entering atmosphere. She knew the burn rates, the fuel consumption, the precise angles needed for a combat drop. It goes around the planet? She said instead, making her voice sound uncertain. A few students giggled. Brandon Miller, who sat 3 seats ahead of her, turned around and smirked. Wow, Amy, really deep thinking there. Mr. Rodriguez sighed and moved on to explain the actual physics. Amy went back to staring out the window. She had learned long ago that it was better to seem dumb than to show how much she really knew. The bell rang and students began packing up their books. Amy moved slowly, letting the others rush past her toward the door. She did not want to get caught in the crowd pushing through the hallway. Amy, wait up. She turned to see Katie Johnson hurrying toward her. Katie had been her best friend since they were little kids, back when Amy actually was the age she was pretending to be now. Katie had blonde hair and bright blue eyes and always seemed happy about something. Want to sit together at lunch? Katie asked, falling into step beside Amy as they walked down the hallway. Sure, Amy said. She liked Katie. Katie was one of the few good things about being back here. They made their way to the cafeteria, which was already filling up with students. The noise hit Amy like a wall. Hundreds of teenagers talking and laughing and shouting at the same time. Chairs scraping against the floor, trays clattering. The sound of the kitchen staff calling out orders. Amy's shoulders tensed. She found herself scanning the room automatically, looking for exits, checking for potential threats. There were 4 ways out of the cafeteria. The main entrance where they had come in. The emergency exit near the kitchen. The doorway that led to the gymnasium. And the service entrance where the food delivery trucks came in. Amy, you okay? Katie was looking at her with concern. Yeah, just tired, Amy said quickly. They got in line for food. The lunch lady, Mrs. Green, smiled at them. What can I get you girls today? I'll have the pizza, Katie said cheerfully. Amy looked at the food options. Everything looked too bright, too artificial. She remembered eating field rations that tasted like cardboard but kept you alive for days. She remembered being so hungry that she would eat anything, grateful just to have something in her stomach. Just a sandwich, she said. They found an empty table near the windows. Katie started talking about her classes, about some boy she liked in her English class, about plans for the weekend. Amy listened and made the right sounds at the right times, but part of her mind was still scanning the room. That was when she noticed Jake Morrison, sitting alone at a table across the cafeteria. He was watching her. Not in a creepy way, but like he was trying to figure something out. Jake was in her physics class and her history class. He was quiet like her, but in a different way. He seemed to actually be thinking about things. Amy looked away quickly. So what do you think? Katie was asking. About what? About coming to Ashley's party on Saturday. I know you don't really like parties, but it might be fun. You've been so quiet since you got back from your family emergency. Amy's stomach tightened. The family emergency. That was the story they had given her to explain why she had been gone for 6 months. A sick relative, family problems, something vague that people would not ask too many questions about. "I don't know," Amy said. "Maybe." "Come on, Amy, used to love hanging out with people. Remember when we were kids and you always wanted to have sleepovers and invite everyone from school?" Amy did remember. She remembered being 12 years old and thinking that having friends over was the most important thing in the world. She remembered caring about things like what movies to watch and what snacks to buy, and whether boys thought she was pretty. That felt like a lifetime ago. "Things change," Amy said quietly. Suddenly, chaos erupted on the other side of the cafeteria. Danny Walsh, who was always getting in trouble, had thrown his sandwich at someone at another table. The sandwich hit a girl named Lisa Martinez, who screamed and threw her apple back at Danny. Within seconds, food was flying everywhere. Students were jumping up from their tables, some laughing, some trying to get out of the way. A teacher was shouting for everyone to stop. More food went flying. Milk cartons exploded against the walls. Amy's body reacted before her mind could stop it. She was on her feet instantly, her eyes tracking every piece of flying food, calculating trajectories and impact points. She identified the 3 nearest exits and the fastest routes to reach them. Her muscles tensed, ready to move, ready to fight or run or take cover. She took 2 quick steps to the right, positioning herself behind a concrete pillar that would provide cover from most angles. Her hand moved toward her hip where she had carried a weapon for so long that she still reached for it without thinking, but there was no weapon there. Just the belt of her jeans. The food fight lasted maybe 30 seconds before the teachers got it under control. Danny Walsh was marched out of the cafeteria by the principal. The custodial staff came in with mops and garbage bags. Students were sent back to their seats to finish eating. Amy realized she was still standing behind the pillar, her heart pounding. Katie was staring at her with wide eyes. "Amy, what was that?" "What was what?" "The way you moved. Like you were expecting someone to attack you or something." Amy forced herself to relax. She walked back to their table and sat down, trying to look casual. "I just didn't want to get hit by food," but Katie was not convinced. "You moved like my dad does. He was in the army, and sometimes when something sudden happens, he gets this look and moves really fast and careful." Amy picked up her sandwich and took a bite. "It tasted like nothing. I don't know what you're talking about." Across the cafeteria, Jake Morrison was still watching her. This time, Amy met his eyes for a moment before looking away. She could see the questions in his expression. The same questions that Katie was asking. The bell rang and lunch was over. Students began clearing their trays and heading to their next classes. Amy walked with Katie toward the exit, trying to act normal, trying to blend in with all the other teenagers. But she could feel Jake's eyes on her as she left the cafeteria. And she knew that her carefully built disguise was starting to crack. That night, Amy sat in her bedroom doing homework. Her mother called her for dinner, but Amy barely heard her. She was staring at her computer screen, where she had opened a news website. The headline read, "Unusual meteor activity reported in outer colonies." Amy's blood ran cold. She knew what those meteors really were. Her phone buzzed with a text message from an unknown number. The message was short: "Package delivered. Await instructions." Amy deleted the message immediately and closed her laptop. She looked around her bedroom at the posters on the walls, the stuffed animals from when she was younger, the photos of her and Katie from middle school. This was supposed to be her normal life. This was supposed to be her chance to be a regular teenager. But Amy Carter was not regular. And she was not 17 years old. She was something else entirely. The next morning, Amy walked into chemistry class and took her usual seat at the back lab table. Her lab partner was Lisa Martinez, the girl who had gotten hit with the sandwich during yesterday's food fight. Lisa was smart and always asked good questions, which made Amy nervous. "Okay, class, today we're going to learn about chemical reactions," Mrs. Thompson announced. She handed out worksheets with instructions for mixing different compounds. "Remember, follow the measurements exactly. These chemicals can be dangerous if you don't handle them properly." Amy looked down at the worksheet. The first experiment was mixing sodium chlorate with sulfur. Her stomach dropped. She knew exactly what that combination could do. She had seen it used to make explosives during the war. "This looks complicated," Lisa said, reading over the instructions. "How much sulfur are we supposed to use?" Amy glanced at the worksheet again. The measurements were wrong. If someone followed these directions exactly, they would create a compound that was much more unstable than Mrs. Thompson probably intended. I think there might be a mistake," Amy said carefully. "What do you mean?" Amy pointed to the numbers on the paper. "If we use this much sulfur with this much sodium chlorate, it could be really reactive. Maybe we should ask Mrs. Thompson." Lisa looked confused. "How do you know that?" Amy realized her mistake. A normal high school student would not know about the explosive properties of chemical compounds. She scrambled for an explanation. "I read about it online," she said quickly. "You know, science websites and stuff." But Lisa was watching her closely. "Now, you seem to know a lot about chemistry for someone who never talks in class." Amy started measuring out the chemicals, her hands moving with practiced precision. She had mixed compounds like these many times before, but under very different circumstances. She knew exactly how to handle them safely, how to measure them accurately, how to store them properly. She finished the experiment in half the time it took other students. Her measurements were perfect. Her technique was flawless. "Wow, Amy," Lisa said, staring at their results. "Are you sure you haven't done this before?" "Just beginner's luck," Amy replied. But she could see the doubt in Lisa's eyes after chemistry. "Class," Amy hurried to her locker. She was putting away her books when she heard Katie's voice behind her. "Hey, Amy, guess what?" Mrs. Peterson said yes. Amy turned around. "Said yes to what?" "The Astronomy Club field trip. We're going to Pine Ridge Park this Friday night to watch the meteor shower. She said we can stay until midnight." "Isn't that awesome?" Amy's blood went cold. A meteor shower. That was exactly what the aliens used as cover when they wanted to scout new planets. She had seen it happen before. "I don't think I can go," Amy said. "What? Why not?" "You love astronomy. Remember when we were kids and you used to make me stay up all night looking at stars with that old telescope your dad bought you?" Amy did remember. She remembered being fascinated by space, by the idea of exploring other worlds. She had dreamed of becoming an astronaut or a scientist. She had never imagined that she would actually travel to other planets, but not as an explorer, as a soldier. "I just have other plans," Amy said. Katie looked hurt. "You always have other plans now. Ever. Since you came back from your family emergency, you don't want to do anything fun anymore." "What happened to you, Amy?" Amy closed her locker and faced her friend. Katie's blue eyes were full of concern and confusion. She wanted to help, but she could never understand what Amy had been through. "Nothing happened," Amy lied. "I'm just tired." "Fine," Katie said, but Amy could tell she was upset. "But if you change your mind, we're meeting at the school parking lot at 7 o'clock. Katie walked away, leaving Amy standing alone by her locker. Amy watched her go and felt something twist in her chest. She missed being the kind of person who got excited about meteor showers and sleepovers and normal teenage things. The rest of the week passed slowly. Amy tried to focus on her classes and act like a regular student, but it was getting harder. In history class, when Mr. Davis talked about famous battles, Amy had to bite her tongue to keep from correcting him. She had been in battles. She knew what they were really like. In English class, when they read poems about war, Amy felt sick. The poems talked about honor and glory and dying for your country. They did not talk about watching your friends get killed. They did not talk about the nightmares that came afterward. By Friday afternoon, Amy was exhausted from pretending. She walked out of school and saw the astronomy club members gathering in the parking lot. Katie was there with her backpack and a thermos of hot chocolate. Ryan Foster, the club president, was setting up a telescope. Mrs. Peterson was checking names off a list. Amy was about to walk past them when she heard Jake Morrison's voice. "Hey Amy, are you coming with us tonight?" She turned and saw him standing by the school bus that would take them to Pine Ridge Park. He was looking at her with that same thoughtful expression he always had. "I don't think so," Amy said. "Come on," Katie called out. "There's still room on the bus. Mrs. Peterson said it's going to be the best meteor shower in years." Amy hesitated. Part of her wanted to go. Part of her wanted to feel normal again, even for just one night. But another part of her was worried. What if the meteors were not what they seemed? "Please, Amy," Katie said. "I promise it will be fun." Amy looked at her friend's hopeful face and made a decision she would later regret. "Okay," she said. "I'll come." The bus ride to Pine Ridge Park took about an hour. Amy sat in the back and listened to the other students talk about their favorite constellations and what they hoped to see tonight. Ryan Foster was explaining the difference between meteors and meteorites. Lisa Martinez was reading a book about space exploration. When they arrived at the park, Mrs. Peterson led them to a clearing on top of a hill where the sky was dark and clear. The students spread out blankets and set up telescopes. Amy found herself sitting next to Jake Morrison. "You know a lot about chemistry," he said quietly. Amy tensed. "What?" "Lisa Martinez told me about your lab work this week. She said you handled those chemicals like a professional." "I just followed the instructions," Amy said. "She also said you corrected the measurements on the worksheet. How did you know they were wrong?" Amy did not answer. She lay back on the blanket and looked up at the stars. The sky was beautiful here, away from the city lights. She could see constellations that she had learned to navigate by during long space flights. She could identify planets that she had actually visited. "Look!" Katie shouted. "There's one!" A bright streak of light shot across the sky, then another. Soon the whole sky was filled with falling stars. The students cheered and pointed and made wishes, but Amy was not watching the pretty lights. She was studying the patterns, the trajectories, the way some of the meteors seemed to change direction, slightly before burning up in the atmosphere. These were not meteors. Her heart started pounding. She sat up and reached for her phone, then remembered she was supposed to be a normal teenager. Normal teenagers did not carry military communication devices. "Amy, what's wrong?" Jake asked. She looked at him and saw concern in his eyes. For a moment, she wanted to tell him everything. She wanted to explain why she was scared, why she could not just enjoy a simple night of stargazing like a normal person. But she could not. Her cover depended on keeping her secrets. "Nothing," she said. "Just feeling a little sick." Another streak of light crossed the sky, this one brighter than the others. Amy tracked its path and felt her worst fears confirmed. It was not burning up completely. Part of it was making it through the atmosphere. "I need to go to the bathroom," Amy said, standing up quickly. "There's a restroom building by the parking lot," Mrs. Peterson said. Amy walked away from the group, but she did not go to the restroom. Instead, she found a quiet spot behind some trees and pulled out a small device that she kept hidden in her backpack. It looked like a regular phone, but it was much more advanced. She activated the scanner and pointed it at the sky. The readings made her blood run cold. These were not meteors. They were spacecraft. And they were landing. Amy looked back at her classmates, who were still laughing and pointing at the lights in the sky. Katie was taking pictures with her phone. Jake was adjusting the telescope. Mrs. Peterson was handing out hot chocolate. They had no idea they were in danger. Amy made a decision. She could not blow her cover, but she could not let her friends get hurt either. She walked back to the group and sat down next to Mrs. Peterson. "I think we should go back to school soon," Amy said carefully. "Some of those meteors look like they're landing pretty close to here," Mrs. Peterson laughed. "That's just an optical illusion, dear. Meteors burn up completely in the atmosphere. They can't hurt us." Amy watched another spacecraft streak across the sky and felt her hands shake. Mrs. Peterson was wrong. They could hurt them, and Amy was the only one who knew it. Amy sat with the astronomy club for another hour, watching more ships disguised as meteors streak across the sky. Every few minutes, she checked her hidden scanner. The readings were getting worse. At least 6 craft had made it through the atmosphere and landed in the woods around Pine Ridge Park. She tried to act normal, but her training kept taking over. She found herself counting exits, checking wind direction, calculating how long it would take to get everyone back to the bus if they needed to run. "Amy, you're making me nervous," Katie whispered. "You keep looking around like something bad is going to happen." "Sorry," Amy said. "Just enjoying the view." But she was not enjoying anything. Her mind was racing through possibilities. The aliens could be scouts, gathering information about Earth's defenses. They could be setting up communication equipment to call for backup. Or worse, they could be preparing to attack. At 11:30, Mrs. Peterson finally announced it was time to pack up and head back to school. Amy felt relief wash over her. At least she could get her friends away from the landing zone. The students gathered their blankets and telescopes and walked back toward the bus. Amy stayed close to Katie and Jake, ready to push them to safety if anything happened. They were almost to the parking lot when Amy heard it. A low humming sound coming from the woods. It was quiet, but she knew that sound. She had heard it many times before. Alien technology powering up. Did anyone else hear that? Ryan Foster asked, stopping in the middle of the path. Most of the students shook their heads, but Jake nodded. "Sounds like some kind of machine. Probably just the park maintenance equipment," Mrs. Peterson said. "Come on, let's get to the bus." Amy knew it was not maintenance equipment. The humming was getting louder, and now she could hear other sounds. Clicking noises, electronic beeps. The unmistakable sound of weapons charging. "We need to leave now," Amy said, trying to keep her voice calm. "What's the rush?" Lisa Martinez asked. Before Amy could answer, a bright blue light flashed through the trees, then another. The students stopped walking and stared toward the forest. "What was that?" Katie asked. Amy's blood went cold. She recognized those lights. They were energy blasts. The aliens were fighting someone or testing their weapons. "Everyone get to the bus right now," Amy said, her voice sharp with command. Students looked surprised at her tone, but they started walking faster. Amy stayed at the back of the group, watching the trees. More blue lights flashed. The humming sound was getting louder. They reached the bus and Mrs. Peterson started counting heads to make sure everyone was there. Amy was about to climb aboard when she heard a scream from the woods. A human scream. Amy froze. There was someone else out there. Someone in trouble. "Did you hear that?" Jake asked, appearing beside her. "Hear what?" Amy lied. "It sounded like someone screaming." Another scream echoed through the trees, followed by the sound of energy weapons firing. Amy made a decision that would change everything. "Mrs. Peterson, I think I dropped my phone back at the clearing," Amy said. "I'll be right back. We can get it tomorrow, dear. The bus needs to leave. It's my mom's phone. She'll kill me if I lose it. Just give me 5 minutes." Before anyone could stop her, Amy ran back toward the woods. She heard Katie calling her name, but she did not turn around. Amy ran through the trees toward the sounds of fighting. Her body moved differently now. She was not pretending to be a clumsy teenager anymore. She moved like what she really was. A soldier. She reached the edge of a small clearing and dropped behind a fallen log. What she saw made her stomach turn. 3 alien creatures were standing over a man in a park ranger uniform. The ranger was bleeding and trying to crawl away. The aliens were tall and thin with gray skin and large black eyes. Amy recognized them. Immediately. Zephyr, IAN said. One of the aliens was holding a weapon pointed at the ranger. Another was working on some kind of device that looked like a communications array. The third was scanning the area with what Amy knew was a life detector. Amy had 2 choices. She could stay hidden and let the ranger die, keeping her cover intact. Or she could help him and risk exposing herself. The ranger looked up and his eyes met hers through the trees. He was young, maybe in his 20s. He mouthed the word, "Help." Amy closed her eyes and made her choice. She reached into her backpack and pulled out a weapon she had hoped never to use again. It looked like a regular flashlight, but it was actually a military-grade plasma rifle, disguised and miniaturized for covert operations. Amy took careful aim and fired. The energy blast hit the first alien in the chest, dropping it instantly. The other 2 spun around, looking for the source of the attack. Amy was already moving, rolling to a new position behind a tree. The second alien fired where she had been hiding, burning a hole through the fallen log. Amy popped up and took it down with 2 quick shots. The third alien was smarter. It grabbed the injured ranger and held him as a shield while backing toward the communication device. "Let him go," Amy said, stepping into the clearing with her. Weapon raised. The alien spoke in its own language. A series of clicks and hisses. Amy understood every word. "You cannot stop the invasion, human child." "The fleet is coming," Amy replied in perfect Zephyrian. "The fleet will find nothing but death here, warrior. Release the human." The alien's large eyes widened in surprise. "You speak our tongue. You are not what you seem." "No," Amy said. "I am." "Not." She fired, her shot precisely placed to avoid hitting the ranger. The alien fell backward, its weapon clattering across the ground. Amy ran to the ranger and knelt beside him. He was hurt but alive. "Thank you," he gasped. "I don't know what those things were, but you're going to be okay," Amy said. "But we need to get out of here, now." She helped him to his feet and started leading him back toward the parking lot. Behind them, the alien communication device was still beeping and flashing. Amy knew she should destroy it, but she could not take the time. People would be looking for her soon. They made it halfway back to the bus when Jake Morrison stepped out. From behind a tree, Amy. She stopped, still supporting the injured ranger. Jake was staring at her with wide eyes. "I followed you," he said quietly. "I saw everything." Amy's mind raced. How much had he seen? How much did he know? "Jake, I can." "Explain. You killed them," he said. "Those things, whatever they were. You killed them like you'd done it before." Amy did not answer. "And you spoke their language," Jake continued. "How do you know their language, Amy?" The ranger was getting heavier in her arms. She could hear voices calling her name from the parking lot. Katie and Mrs. Peterson and the other students were looking for her. "Jake, please," Amy said. "I need you to trust me." "Trust you? I don't even know who you are." Jake was right. He did not know who she was. None of them did. "My name is Amy Carter," she said. "But I'm not 17 years old." Jake stared at her. "What?" "I'm 22. I'm a lieutenant in the Colonial Defense Force. I've been fighting aliens like these for the past 4 years." "That's impossible. I was wounded in battle. Not physically, but mentally. The military gave me a new identity and sent me here to recover. But I'm not recovered, Jake. And now the war has followed me home." The voices were getting closer. Amy could see flashlights moving through the trees. "The ranger needs medical attention," Amy said. and those things were sending a signal to their ship. More of them might be coming. Jake looked at the injured man, then back at Amy. What do? We get everyone out of here. Then I contact my commanding officer and tell him Earth is no longer safe. Amy, where are you? Katie's voice echoed. Through the woods. Amy looked at Jake one more time. Can you keep my secret? At least until we get everyone to safety? Jake nodded slowly. But afterward, you're going to tell me everything. Afterward, everyone is going to know everything, Amy said. My cover is blown. They helped the ranger back to the parking lot. Amy told Mrs. Peterson that they had found him injured and needed to call an ambulance. She made up a story about him falling and hitting his head. On the bus ride back to school, Amy sat next to Jake. Katie kept asking questions about what had happened, but Amy gave vague answers. Jake was quiet the whole trip, but Amy could feel him watching her. She knew he was trying to understand how the quiet girl from physics class had turned into someone who could fight alien monsters. When they got back to Lincoln High School, Amy waited until the other students had gone home. Then she walked to a quiet corner of the parking lot and pulled out her reel communication device. She entered a code she had not used in months. Control, this is Lieutenant Carter. Emergency Protocol 7. Request immediate extraction. A voice crackled through the device. Carter, you're supposed to be on medical leave. Medical leave is over, sir. The Zephyrians have found Earth. There was a long pause. Confirmed, Lieutenant. Extraction team en route. ETA 6 hours. Amy turned off the device and looked back at the school. In 6 hours, her life as a normal teenager would be over forever. Jake was standing by the school entrance, waiting for her. So what happens now? He asked. Amy walked over to him. Now I go back to war. And you and Katie and everyone else get to stay safe. What about your cover? What cover? Amy said. By tomorrow morning, everyone is going to know that Amy Carter is not who she pretended to be. Jake was quiet for a moment. Are you scared? Amy thought about the question. I've been scared every day since I came back. Amy did not sleep that night. She sat by her bedroom window, watching the sky for signs of more alien ships. Her extraction team would arrive in a few hours, and then her life as a high school student would be over forever. At 6 in the morning, her phone rang. It was Katie. Amy, turn on the news. Right now. Amy grabbed the remote and turned on her television. The morning news was showing footage of Pine Ridge Park. Military vehicles surrounded the area. Soldiers in combat gear were searching the woods. Local authorities are investigating reports of unusual activity at Pine Ridge Park last night, the news reporter said. A park ranger was found injured and claims to have seen strange lights and creatures in the forest. Amy's stomach dropped. The ranger was talking. Her phone rang again. This time it was Jake. Amy, we need to talk. Meet me at school in 1 hour. Amy knew she should wait for her extraction team, but she could not leave without saying goodbye. She got dressed and walked to Lincoln High School. The building was empty except for a few teachers. Preparing for Monday's classes, Amy found Jake sitting on the steps outside the main entrance. The news is calling it a hoax, Jake said as she sat down beside him. They're saying the ranger hit his head and imagined everything. That's what they always say, Amy replied. But you and I know the truth. Amy nodded. More ships will come, Jake. What happened last night was just the beginning. They sat in silence for a few minutes, watching cars drive past the school. Normal people going to normal jobs, not knowing that aliens had landed on their planet. I have to ask you something, Jake said finally. When you were fighting those creatures last night, you moved like you'd done it 1,000 times before. How many aliens have you killed, Amy? Amy stared at her hands. I stopped counting after the first year. Jesus. I was 18 when I enlisted, just 1 year older than you are now. I thought I was going to see the universe, maybe fight some. pirates or help with trade disputes. I never imagined I'd spend 4 years in a war. What was it like? Amy tried to find words to describe it. Imagine the worst day of your life. Then imagine having that same day over and over again for years, watching your friends die, making decisions that save some people but kill others, coming back to base camps where half the beds are empty. Jake was quiet for a long time. Why did you come back here? Why didn't you just stay in the military? Because I broke, Amy said simply. During my last mission, I had to choose between saving a transport full of civilians or protecting my squad. I chose the civilians. My squad died because of that choice. But you saved the civilians. Yes, but I couldn't live with the guilt. I started having panic attacks during combat. I couldn't sleep. I couldn't make decisions anymore. So they gave me a medical discharge and a new identity. And you became 17-year-old Amy Carter. I became someone who never had to make life or death choices. Someone who could worry about homework and boys and what to wear to school. Jake looked at her. Did it work? Amy thought about the question. For a while, I almost started to believe. I really was just a normal teenager. But every night, I dreamed about the war. And every day, I felt like I was lying to everyone who cared about me. A car pulled into the school parking lot. Amy recognized the driver immediately. Colonel Martinez, her former commanding officer. He was not supposed to arrive for another 2 hours. I have to go, Amy said, standing up. Is that your ride? Yes, Jake stood up too. What should I tell Katie? She's going to want to know where you went. Amy reached into her backpack and pulled out a letter she had written during the night. Give her this. It explains everything I can tell her. Amy, wait. Jake grabbed her arm. Will I ever see you again? Amy looked at his face and saw genuine sadness there. She realized that in the past few weeks, Jake had become a real friend. Maybe the first real friend she had ever had. I don't know, she said honestly. The war is coming to Earth now. Everything is going to change. Colonel Martinez got out of his car and walked toward them. He was a tall man with gray hair and scars on his hands from old battles. Lieutenant Carter, he said, are you ready? Yes, sir. Jake stared at the colonel, then back at Amy. Lieutenant? That's my real rank, Amy said. I was promoted after the civilian transport mission. Colonel Martinez looked at Jake with concern. Is this young man cleared for this information? He knows everything, sir. He was there last night. The colonel frowned. That complicates things. Sir, with respect, everything is already complicated. The Zephyrians know Earth's location now. They'll be back with a full invasion force, which is why we need you back on active duty immediately. Your knowledge of their tactics could save millions of lives. Amy nodded, but she felt a weight settle in her chest. She had known this day would come, but she was not ready for it. I need 5 more minutes, she told the colonel. Make it quick, Lieutenant. Colonel Martinez walked back to his car, giving them privacy. So you're really leaving? Jake said, I have to. It's my job. Your job is to be a student at Lincoln High School. Amy smiled sadly. No, Jake. My job is to protect people like you from things like what we saw last night. The student thing was just pretend. Just then, Katie's car pulled into the parking lot. She jumped out and ran toward them, still in her pajamas. Amy, I've been calling you all morning. Did you see the news about the park? Amy looked at her best friend and felt her heart break a little. Katie still looked like a normal teenager. Messy hair, no makeup, wearing fuzzy slippers. She had no idea how much danger she was in. Katie, I need you to read this letter, Amy sighed, handing her the envelope, but not until after I leave. Leave? Where are you going? Away. For how long? Amy could not answer that question. She might never come back. The war with the Zephyrians could last years, or it could be over in weeks if Earth lost. I don't know, Amy said. Katie looked confused and hurt. Amy, what's going on? You've been acting strange for weeks, and now you're leaving without explaining anything? The letter will explain, Amy said. Just promise me you'll be careful. Stay close to home. Listen to the news. If anything weird happens, anything at all, call the police immediately. You're scaring me. Good, you should be scared. Colonel Martinez honked his horn. It was time to go. Amy hugged Katie tightly. I'm sorry I couldn't be a better friend. I wanted to be normal for you. You are normal, Amy. You're my best friend. Amy pulled away and looked at Katie's face. No, I'm not normal. But I promise I'll do everything I can to keep you safe. She turned to Jake. Take care of her. And take care of yourself. Amy, wait. But Amy was already walking toward the colonel's car. She threw her backpack in the back seat and got in the passenger side. As they drove away, she looked back and saw Jake and Katie standing together on the school steps, reading. Her letter. How long do we have? Amy asked the colonel. Our deep space monitors detected a Zephyrian battle fleet leaving their home system 3 days ago. They'll reach Earth in approximately 6 weeks. How big is the fleet? Bigger than anything we've ever faced. 200 ships, maybe more. Amy stared out the window at the houses and stores they were passing. Normal people were starting their normal days. Kids were riding bikes. Parents were walking dogs. None of them knew that in 6 weeks, their world might be a battlefield. What's the plan, sir? You're going to help us prepare Earth's defenses. Your tactical knowledge of Zephyrian combat strategies is the best we have. And after the battle? Colonel Martinez was quiet for a moment. If we win, you can choose your next assignment. If we lose, it won't matter. Amy nodded and closed her eyes. She thought about Katie and Jake, about the other students at Lincoln High School, about all the normal people who deserved to keep living their normal lives. She had tried to be one of them, but it had never really worked. She was a soldier. She always had been, and she always would be. But now she had something to fight for that she had never had before. She had friends. She had people who cared about her. She had seen what normal life looked like, and she knew it was worth protecting. When the Zephyrians came, they would find Earth defended by someone who understood exactly what they were trying to destroy. Someone who had lived among the people she was sworn to protect. Amy Carter had tried to be a normal teenager and failed, but Lieutenant Amy Carter was about to become the best soldier Earth had ever seen. The car turned onto the highway, carrying her away from Lincoln High School and back to the war that had never really ended. Behind them, Katie and Jake stood in the parking lot, holding a letter that would change their understanding of everything. A letter that began, Dear Katie, my real name is Lieutenant Amy Carter, and I am not 17 years old.